everyone, this video is for those of you who have a dog who suddenly started to pull again after walking quite nicely on walks, or when you go to a new location, your dog pulls at that specific location because they're excited to be there and they forget everything they've learned about loose leash walking. So what I tell people when they start to have a leash walking problem again is, one, is the dog scared or overexcited? And then I will recommend them to work on the video that I'm going to have follow this video, which is Be Calm and Listen in New Places. And it's about going somewhere and relaxing there, and then taking little short trips away from where you're relaxing. So like a settle mat or your car, and you're not just going on a very long walk where your dog is pulling and pulling and pulling and stressing. Because sometimes if you do that, that can become the new habit in that new location. And also it doesn't help teach your dog to be calmer. It's important to address the arousal and fear if those are the causes of the pulling on the leash, but it's also important to teach your dog what you do want them to do when they feel pressure on leash. And sometimes you need to do brush up training sessions on this if you start to see your dog beginning to pull again. So perhaps they were pulling and it did just get a little bit reinforced by you following your dog to sniff something, and they've started to pull a little bit, and you're feeling frustrated and you can't get them to stop pulling. So I really suggest refreshing the leash pressure game, which I tell clients to practice at least 10 to 12 times in a short 1-minute training session or less over 2 to 3 weeks before you're going to see any difference in behavior on a walk. So you're really conditioning your dog that when they feel the pressure on the leash, they think, oh, I need to reconnect with my owner. I need to turn around and find them again or back up. And by practicing first in your home or yard, you can really build back your connection with your dog and build back the reinforcement of finding you again and learning that when they hit the end of the leash, it means to turn back to you by first starting where it's really easy and then bringing it back on walks. Now I'm going to play the 2 video tutorials that I just described. Hi everybody, this video is on the topic of taking your puppy or adult dog out somewhere new and setting your dog up for success if they typically can be a little bit worried or overexcited when they go somewhere new. Now Epic here, my little puppy, is actually really good in lots of different environments, but I haven't always had puppies like her, and so I usually set dogs up for success in this way when going new places. Now previously, before I took her here, I have worked very religiously on reinforcing her for settling inside of her crate like this, as well as if you had a larger dog, you can teach them to relax on a mat like she's doing here. And so when you go to a new environment, you can bring your crate if you have a little dog, or a mat if you have a bigger dog. And if you have a bigger dog, you can also simply park somewhere new, open the back door and have your dog in a crate, and just sprinkle some treats in there and reinforce your dog for settling in the crate in a new environment while they're still inside the car. Now, if you don't work on the settle in the crate at home, say when your car is parked, or when you have the crate inside your house and your yard in non-distracting environments first, then it can be quite stressful for the dog and they might not think to settle. So the really important part of the homework here is reinforcing settling behaviors at home first, so you can bring that calmness to other environments. The same with if you wanted to teach your dog to sit, you would work on that in your house, maybe your kitchen, your living room, and then when the dog's really good at it, then you could start asking for it out and about. But if you try to teach sit when your dog's stressed or excited and not taking treats out and about, they're not going to learn how to sit. So that's the beauty of working on these behaviors at home. You can then bring the mat and it's going to help your dog think to relax in a new place. Conversely, most people, when they get somewhere new, they're excited about checking out the environment, so they'll set off walking, and what can happen is that the dog will pull straight ahead, or there's just too much stimulation going on for the dog, where if you just relax for a little bit and let the dog just sit and look around at the environment, it can be very helpful to decreasing how excited or worried they are about where they are. When your dog first settles in a new environment, It's natural for the dog to be looking at you for the reinforcement if you've just given them a treat like this, so the dog is going to be staring up at you to begin with. Once your dog becomes a pro, you don't have to reinforce this, and you can wait till your dog is casually relaxing and enjoying the environment. But at first, to give your dog a head start, if they think to go to their mat and they lay down, you can reinforce that and make it easier for the dog by giving them a couple of treats for simply going and laying on their mat. Then, as you progress and your dog is feeling comfortable, you can reinforce your dog for noticing things in the environment and not just thinking about the food. So if you constantly feed your dog for just staring at the treats, if you don't have any treats, the dog might not think to lay down when you're out and about. So what you're going to do is wait for those moments that the dog is looking around at something in the environment, and that's when you can use a calm marker or simply just put a treat calmly between your dog's feet. Like that. Basically, I'm waiting for her to be distracted by the environment and look around, and then that's the moment that I'm going to mark and reinforce. And it's a little chilly here today in San Diego, so she's shivering a little bit. And previously, when we've done this exercise in the sun, she's much more comfortable. So with her, I wouldn't necessarily be out and about sitting when it's kind of cold. I would choose a time where it's sunny and warm for her to relax on her mat. And if I wanted to do this exercise, I could have her in a sweater. So now she's noticed another dog walking by, and I'm going to reinforce her for simply watching the dog pass calmly. Good. Good job. Good. Good. Oh, thank you. Good. Good. And now a skateboarder's going by. Good. If your dog's not taking treats, you can sprinkle the treats in the crate or on the mat and limit the leash so that at some point your dog is going to realize there's not very much things to do in this environment except eat the treats, and they might be more interested in the treats later. You want to refrain from trying to get your dog to eat the treats and putting the treats in your dog's face if they're not interested. Just put the treats on the mat or in the crate like you do at home, and at some point the dog might think to go and eat those treats, and that's a wonderful sign that they're feeling calmer in that environment. If your dog is really struggling and they can't take treats and they start whining or seeming stressed, you can go and practice this exercise in front of your house or in your yard or at home at first, or simply try the exercise where you have the dog in the car and are working on the settle in the crate. If you have a dog that gets worried or excited in new locations, you can choose a location that you think your dog is going to do best at to begin this exercise. So for example, if your dog gets overwhelmed in crowded situations, you might choose a place where, say for example, a baseball field that no one's visiting, where it's completely isolated, to work on this exercise first, before then visiting another location, perhaps during the middle of the day when everyone's at work and there are few people there, or a place that not very many people go to begin this exercise. However, I have to say, if you have a herding breed or a dog that gets startled when there's nothing going on in the environment, and then suddenly someone or a person with a dog come out of the blue, that can be very startling to some dogs. So choosing a location, for example, the edge of a parking lot or some grass, in a mall that overlooks an area where there's some foot traffic that's going back and forth on a path, then your dog is seeing an ebb and flow of people going by, and they can relax, seeing multiple people moving rather than nothing and then suddenly a person appearing out of nowhere. So this might be too close for some dogs, but we're sitting next to a pathway that people walk up and down. So if you had a dog that was nervous, you could sit further away and then reinforce your dog for the people walking back and forth on this path. And I chose a pretty busy time where there's lots of traffic going back and forth, cars and people. Once your dog is successful with settling in this environment, you can then take little adventures away from the mat and then return to calm your dog down again. So you can either do calm, sniffy walks where you allow your dog or puppy to explore the environment, or you can work on exercises such as loose leash walking or strong behaviors they already know. I don't suggest working on something new or adding criteria to any of your behaviors in a new environment. Instead, you want to ask your dog for behaviors that are really strong. So I like to ask for behaviors that I've worked on a lot, such as attention and the attention game. Recalls are also great, but if you're trying to get your dog to be calm, maybe I would work on something else besides an exciting behavior like a recall. Are you ready? So I'm gonna go on a little sniffy walk and let her investigate the environment. So I'm gonna say, let's go, and call her off the blanket, and I'm just gonna get this leash out from under her leg, whoop, and then let her sniff around. So you can have a cue for your dog to explore the environment, like go sniff and point. Go sniff. Go sniff. If you have a dog that's more interested at staring at you or the treats, you can mark and reinforce for your dog sniffing around. And conversely, if your dog sniffs around a lot and finds it highly reinforcing, you can reinforce your dog for coming away from the smells and back to you when you say, let's go. Here are some exercises you should work on first before playing the leash pressure game with your puppy. This is because you want to reinforce your puppy for moving towards you, moving with you, and moving with you when you make direction changes. And once you've reinforced all of these behaviors, it will make it way easier for the puppy to want to choose to move with you when you add the leash pressure. In my opinion, the 4 exercises that you want to work on first are the attention game, the recall, reinforcing your puppy for standing next to you and walking next to you, and reinforcing your puppy for direction changes while walking at your side. Check out the written description below for links to video tutorials on how to train these. This is footage of one of our first outings to the park. After letting my puppy explore and sniff the park, I spent 1 to 2 minutes playing the attention game, reinforcing the position at my side, and direction changes. The leash pressure game. Step 1. Add light pressure on the leash as you lower your puppy forward and then feed a treat. The point of this step is to accustom the puppy to the sensation of the leash pressure so it's not a sudden surprise. I suggest attaching the leash to your dog's harness when you play games like this, as well as walk your dog. If you're going to be walking your dog with the leash attached to the front of your dog's harness, you need to work on this exercise with the leash attached to the front as well as the back. Keep an eye on your puppy's tail and make sure it's in a natural position and the puppy is not tucking their tail. If the puppy starts to tuck the tail, you can work on games like the attention game, the recall, as well as handling exercises rather than working on the leash pressure game yet. Step 2. Put a distraction down on the ground that makes the puppy pull on leash. Use your attention noise or a treat lure to get your puppy to turn around and come back to you. Pop, pop. What to do if your puppy doesn't turn around? 1. Practice from further away from the distraction. You can have a helper put down the distraction to make this easier. 2. Use a lower value treat as the distraction and a higher value treat as the reinforcer. Step 3. Put a distraction down on the ground that makes the puppy pull on leash. When the puppy is on a tight leash, move in the opposite direction of the puppy without jerking him. Mark and reinforce when you see your puppy turn in your direction. If the puppy doesn't turn toward you within 2 seconds, use your attention noise or treat lure to get your puppy to turn around and come back to you.
Good boy. Good boy.
Mark the moment the puppy turns towards you and feed the puppy the treat as close to your body as you can to train the puppy to come all the way to you. Mark and reinforce multiple times for the puppy being at your side or being in front of you before you repeat the exercise. If your puppy sits or lays down, simply revert back to using the treat lure. So she went out, she felt the leash pressure, and that made her want to come back and not be on a tight leash. Basically, you're teaching the dog when they feel the tight leash, they should come near you to loosen the leash. Now, if you keep proofing this game, your dog is going to generalize it, so you could use different types of food, different types of toys, different types of people and dogs and places to sniff, like a fire hydrant. You're going to teach your dog when they see things they want, the only way to get there is on a loose leash. Hey, pup-ups. So I'm going to move the distraction over here and do the game again. So pressure on the leash, click, and feed. What you're not doing is jerking your dog. You're holding the leash against your body to move your dog. Good job. And be careful that you don't back up and trip on something, because that happens to me a lot, especially in public. Step 4. Practice with different distractions in different situations. I suggest playing this game for 1 to 2 minutes, 10 to 12 times in the first few weeks that you own your new puppy or dog. This is Martina's Border Collie Lumos at 6 months, and you can see he has a positive emotional response when he feels the pressure on the leash, and he knows what to do when he feels the pressure. If you notice your dog starts to pull again, it's a great idea to go back and do brush-up training sessions. Here's an example of working on the leash pressure game with a high-level distraction. If something is too much for your dog, you'll notice that they won't be able to turn away from the distraction. So if this happens, you need to make the distraction less exciting or move further away from the distraction. If you're doing this exercise correctly, you'll find that your puppy will stop pulling altogether. This is a good thing. If he keeps trying to go for the distraction, it means the distraction is too difficult, too close, or you need to spend more time marking and reinforcing him for staying with you after he comes back. In real-life situations, if your puppy starts pulling on leash, you can simply back up until he is on a loose leash, then wait a bit until you have made a connection with him again before walking forward. Thanks so much for watching. If you have a question, you can leave it as a comment. See you later.